The offseason never sleeps, and neither do we here on Kevin's Corner. We are back, another edition of Kevin's Corner. We appreciate everyone listening. Throughout the offseason, we'll be once a week, potentially twice a week if things get crazy. I would say they've been steady so far, and I think they'll continue to be steady, honestly, really through the draft. I'm Kevin Bowen, back. Chris Presley on this Tuesday around noontime. We are recording. What were your thoughts, Chris, on a Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes weekend?
It's going to be a fun one, that's for sure. I thought it was, kind of fitting that you might see the torch passed.
Yeah.
From one AFC great to another. I know as Colts fans, we don't necessarily like to pay as much respect to Tom Brady as it's probably deserved, but
he's damn good.
It is cool to see, the first team playing in their home stadium and whatnot, but I'm obviously going to be pulling for the Chiefs.
Yeah, same.
But, yeah, it was a fun game. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought those throws Brady made in the first half on third down were just massive. I mean, those were not easy throws at all. And then I thought Bruce Arians showed why he has a you-know-what bigger than I think anyone else in the league. And that might sound a bit graphic early in the podcast, but that's BA, man.
Yep.
And I love Bruce Arians and was fortunate to, work a little bit alongside him back in that 2012 season, and just he is exactly who he is. I mean, what you see is certainly who he is behind the scenes and things like that. And we talk about aggression, and I thought the whole game changed really at the end of the first half. We'll talk endlessly about the 4th and goal from the 9 decision. You got to come back from 3 scores down. I mean,
yeah,
that's a challenge. Now, did you have 2 interceptions and you go 3 and out after those and all that? But I thought the game just totally changed right there at the end of the first half. Rodgers' pick could have been holding on Tampa. Then to go for it on the 4th down, when Brady's sitting on the bench at that point, and Arians takes that time out, and then obviously that kill shot to Scotty Miller. That's the game right there. Scotty Miller, is that the kid's name?
Yeah.
I was
fast, real quick.
Yeah, we had a kicker in high school named Scotty Miller. I was like, all right, I'm just making sure I'm not thinking of him. And then the second game, Buffalo, you can't kick 2 field goals inside the 30, they might have even been shorter than that, 20 and 27, I think they were. And you had chances. Kansas City gave you the gift early in that game, but I just thought the moment might have been a little bit too big for Buffalo, and that getting to that level and getting to that stage. Kansas City's been there now 3 straight years. So, yeah, plenty of storylines, and I'm sad. We're just down to 1 game in the NFL season, but like I said, man, there's no shortage of entertainment with our Colts right now.
No, overall, great postseason so far in terms of the entertainment value, and pretty cool. You mentioned obviously the big game left, that they're letting a lot of the medical workers go down and experience that.
Yeah, I think 22,000, I believe, in the building down there in Tampa, and then 7,500 first line healthcare workers, which is awesome by the NFL. And you guys have heard me say this before. I think the league deserves a lot of credit for pulling this off, and it'll be a long wait till February, whatever it is, but excited to watch it, and excited for this podcast. We're gonna hit on, I guess there's quarterback news.
There is. It's not been a slow off season for the Colts by any means.
No, and I said on last week's podcast I don't want to touch on quarterback every single pod. I lied. We're going to be touching on it on this podcast, and we're going to be hitting on it pretty hard, honestly, just with the Matthew Stafford news over the weekend, and I do have a little bit of Philip Rivers additional info that we'll get to in Twitter questions. Chris, I honestly had in my mind after Wednesday's podcast, like, okay, next week, let's talk edge rusher and cornerback. 2 needs, 2 debatable topics that are important. They're not maybe as important as quarterback, but, they're still topics that I want to talk about. So for now, we will table that for next week's podcast. But, again, a little bit of coaching news, a little bit of quarterback news that we'll hit on before Twitter questions.
Yeah, so let's jump right in and start right there in terms of some of the most recent news, obviously, and the changing of the guard at the offensive coordinator position, Nick Sirianni going to the Eagles, and kind of just let us know, Kevin, if people had to Google who Marcus Brady is.
Yeah, no, I'm sure people did. Marcus Brady's a former CFL coach that has been at the Colts for 3 years now, quarterbacks coach, and gets a promotion to be OC. I don't think this is groundbreaking by any means. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. This is Frank Reich's offense. This is Frank Reich's system. He's the play caller. does your offense coordinator matter? Sure. Does it matter in a lot of other places more so than it does here in Indianapolis? Without a doubt. And so I think Marcus Brady is very similar to Frank Reich in temperament, which I'm kind of curious how that'll go. I think Marcus Brady comes from a very different background than Frank Reich in the coaching world. But again, from a temperament standpoint, they're pretty similar. Mm-hmm. And I think Nick Sirianni was a little bit different. Nick was pretty even-keeled during the week, but on game days, that's a fiery dude. That dude isn't afraid to chirp at some other people on opposing teams and whatnot. So, what can Brady, I guess, counter with Reich? I think the offensive coordinator is in this position when you're not the play caller and it's not your offense. You're a sounding board, and, how do your new ideas mesh? Can you not be a yes man, in that position? And just, kind of be a bit of a contrarian of, okay, these are new ideas. Have we thought about this? What if, they decide to bring, they flip TJ Watt to the other side? How do we protect that? And I guess that's part of Brady's duties. He's been a big pass protection plan guy. That's kind of been on his responsibility list with Ryan Kelly and either Jacoby Brissett or Phillip Rivers or Andrew Luck, whoever's been the starter. Obviously, a ton of hands-on work with Jacob Eason off to the side before games this season. Mm-hmm. And I think he's big on the fundamentals of the quarterback position. Remember when Luck came back in 2018, Andrew was so focused on building that ground up, building the new base, starting there with his fundamentals. I think he helped Jacoby a little bit with footwork as well. Rivers maybe not as much, but that is kind of a big aspect to him. So, again, this is not earth-shattering news. It would be much, much bigger if Matt Eberflus was leaving, and we'll see how the Houston job plays out. But I don't know. It seems like they might be going in a different direction there. Who knows? So, yeah, this is, it's notable because it's a title change. And, honestly, it's really notable to me, Chris, in that I can't believe the Eagles hired Nick Sirianni. And that will sound like a shot at Nick. I don't want it to sound like a shot at him. It's just they are taking a risk. I think Nick is a tremendous human. I think he's super relatable and super personable and very down to earth, just like a dude you want to go have, several beers with, honestly, which that will help, I think, to be very relatable in an NFL locker room. But have we ever had a Monday podcast where we've called out Nick Sirianni?
Right.
No, like his accountability, and he might feel accountability, but it's one thing to feel it internally. It's another thing to wake up in the morning and be like, oh, honey, did you see the news? Oh, did you check, your wife's Twitter mentions? Did, the kids come back from school and they're getting ripped because daddy made the wrong play call? This is Philadelphia, folks. Yeah. This isn't Jacksonville. You aren't hiding from anything there. So that is what is surprising to me of just, again, the accountability that he has had on his plate as a head coach is non-existent, obviously. As a play caller is non-existent, something he never did. Frank never even wanted him to call plays in the preseason. Sometimes you see offensive coordinators, maybe call plays in the final game of the preseason or something like that. So, but it goes to show you, man, offensive minds.
Yeah.
It's what this league is all about. And here's Carson Wentz, and you need to resurrect that project. So, again, I like Nick a lot, but I got to be honest with you. I was surprised, and good for him. 39 years old, but being the offensive coordinator and living in Bridgewater Golf Course and in Westfield and just kind of having it a little bit behind the scenes is certainly different from the old NFC East and the Philly market.
Yeah, I would agree because, like you mentioned, he's going to a place that's pretty turbulent at the moment, and he's got already a quarterback controversy that he's going to have to handle right out of the gate, and a fan base that is wondering what the heck happened over a 3-year span to put us here.
And one more thing, Chris, before we move on. I'm going to fill in for JMV on Friday from 3 to 6 on our station 107.5 The Fan, and we're going to have Marcus Brady on during that show for a segment. So if you guys have any questions or anything you're curious about, Marcus is a really nice guy and usually relatively expansive with his answers as well. So feel free to shoot me a DM or something that you might want to know because, again, like you said, Chris, I don't think there's a whole lot that even I know, to be honest with you, about his responsibilities. I know a little bit, but he has been behind the scenes like any NFL assistant would be.
Well, yeah, so everyone tune into that. You can go to 1075thefan.com if you're not from the local Indianapolis market, 3 to 6, like Kevin said, on Friday. Let's talk about a guy that Marcus Brady might be dealing a lot with next year.
Hey, now. That's a segue.
Matthew Stafford. Now, there have been rumblings. It's gotten a little bit louder as this week's gone on. Let's just talk about if we want him, what we think of him, how could he possibly take us to a Super Bowl? Where's he at?
Yeah. When did this break? Saturday, Sunday, something like that?
Yeah, this weekend sometime.
Yeah, so that's when I quickly shift my mind to, okay, we'll be spending a little bit more time on old Matthew Stafford on Tuesday's podcast. I will have a little bit more when we get into Twitter questions on this, Chris, but let me start here with Stafford. Everyone knows that I've been team draft, and I am team draft. I just think that is that's what it takes to truly feel good long term. But when you combine the two things of the best and most realistic option, I think Matthew Stafford answers that question here in 2021. Again, the most realistic, i.e. Rodgers, Watson, probably out the window. And the best option, I still think Dak Prescott gets re-signed by Dallas. You could argue, I guess, Dak and Stafford. But to me, I really like Matthew Stafford as a football player. And, on the surface, does he have a handful of years left? You'd hope. I mean, he's only 32. So, to me, it checks a lot of important boxes. Again, if I were ranking how I would want the Colts to address quarterback, number one would still be through the draft. But like a 1A, knowing full well that it's a lot less risky than going through the draft would be Matthew Stafford. So, I like it. I think he should be pursued. And now, to me, it comes down to, are you willing to get into a bidding war? Because I think he's going to be very sought after. And what is Detroit looking for? I think that's another aspect to this at all. But I guess let's start with Stafford. Certainly proven in the NFL. I actually went back, and Rosie Bo woke up pretty early Sunday morning, so I went back and watched the Colts-Lions game on Sunday. And I guess what I am reminded of with Stafford is he gives you two elements to the quarterback position, Chris, that you didn't have last season. And again, Phillip Rivers did a lot of good for this football team, and there are areas that Phillip Rivers is better than Matthew Stafford. But when you looked at limitations at quarterback, one was how big the arm was and how vertical you felt like you could challenge defenses. Stafford unquestionably checks that box. And two, you forget that Stafford can make a few more plays with his legs than he gets credit for. He ran 4.8 at the 40. Is he freaking, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen? Hell no. But there's just some subtleties in the plays he's able to keep alive that, again, Rivers was stuck in mud in that pocket. So I think that is enticing, that there is a little bit more to be offered at the quarterback position. Is the floor maybe as high as it was with Rivers? Maybe not. I don't think it's like that much lower with Stafford at quarterback, but I think the ceiling is higher. I think Matthew Stafford gives you more potential at quarterback than Phillip Rivers gave this team last season and would give this team in 2021. And so I guess the questions that I always get is, does he get you over the hump? And the hump being, I guess, making a January playoff run. I don't know if he gets you to the Super Bowl, Chris. But again, to me, he gives you more potential to possibly be talking about the Colts on January 26, 2022, than a Phillip Rivers-led Colts team would have given you that opportunity. So that's how I look at Stafford. You love the amount of comebacks. That's something as well, Chris. That's probably an element that, we certainly questioned here on this podcast about Phillip and could you lead those? Now, has Matthew Stafford done it in the month of January? No. And that's certainly an elephant in the room. You'd argue, what type of support has he had? I think he's only had, his decade long with the Lions, he only had one rusher of over 900 yards in a season. Yeah. And that was Reggie Bush when they really should have beat Dallas, in that playoff game. A terrible call. I think a pass interference call in that game. But, just not a lot of support around him. So I think that's something that you have to keep in mind as well. So, look, this is not a perfect, you're getting to the Super Bowl, you're beating the Chiefs, in the AFC title game next year, whatever. But again, I think it gives you more hope.
It's going to be interesting if the Colts do get Stafford. In the locker room, you're going to have Jacob Eason, former Georgia Bulldog, who's compared to Matthew Stafford, and both wear number 9.
Ooh. I didn't even think about that.
So Jacob Eason might be getting a little bit of money to trade that number out.
I was gonna say, Jacob, start looking at at other numbers there. Chris, I just think there's just a little bit more pop, just a higher ceiling. And I mean, you know me, I'm so big on that, especially at that position. I went back and did a little bit more kind of research around that Colts-Lions game from last year, and I was reminded of what Reich talked about Matthew Stafford, and I posted an article up on 1075thefan.com, and for those that haven't seen it now, feel free to check that out. And Reich specifically talks about Stafford as a quarterback, and it's the arm talent. It's the elite arm talent. It's the throws that he makes that not a lot of guys can make in this league of, every guy has arm talent to a degree. That dude has elite arm talent. And Frank was, and I don't know if people will remember this unless you had somebody on your fantasy football team. You probably don't. But the Lions came back and beat the Falcons last year in a thrilling finish the week before they played the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had this right. They're down 6, 20-some seconds to go, no timeouts, and they're 40 yards away from the end zone. That's not good. I mean, if this was the Colts, it'd be like, sideline, and you hope the Hail Mary can get to the end zone. And Stafford sits back in that pocket, and he throws a ball over the middle of the field to Kenny Golladay.
Yep.
That Golladay had Golladay was stunned when the ball got to him, and it hit him right in between the 1 and the 8. I think that's Galladay's number. 19 maybe, I don't know. Like, just a perfectly timed thrown ball at that moment of the game when time and score and all of that is just in flames. All of that is around you, and you're thinking to myself, oh my gosh, how is this going to work? There's no chance the Lions are going to come back. And Stafford rifles this ball in there with Falcons defenders around him. It was a tight window to squeeze that ball in. Sprints up. Ball is spiked. There's kind of chaos on the spike, people off sides and whatnot. And then the next play, they have, I think it's like 3 seconds to go in the ball game. And he just makes that subtle movement with his legs. Again, it's not a full-on scramble, but it's a let's slide to the left.
Yep.
And that all of a sudden changes the X's and O's of the play to scramble drill, and T.J. Hawkinson breaks free, and there's a game-winning touchdown.
Right.
Chris, you hate to boil it down to one play, one game, one moment, but like that is what the Colts didn't have last year. And again, Rivers did a lot of good. And he is, I think, a little bit more consistent quarterback, but a lot of things have to be in place for Rivers to excel. If you provide Matthew Stafford with those same things, can you reach a level with this offense and team overall that you couldn't reach with Rivers? And basically, Reich was obsessed with the throw to Golladay. He's like, that throw in that moment, that's what this guy is. He makes those throws in critical situations. I think he's 7th in NFL history in most fourth-quarter comebacks. And if you look at the names above him, Peyton, Brady, Breeze, Unitas, Roethlisberger, Marino. I mean, like.
Yeah.
And again, are we saying Matthew Stafford is a first-ballot Hall of Fame quarterback? Hell no. But the dude's done a lot of good in the NFL. So it's not as Band-Aid as I think a Matt Ryan would be, or certainly a Rivers would be. I mean, again, 32, 33, he's battled some injuries. Like, you can't overlook that. He's battled several injuries. He often suits up. His toughness, I mean, there was a great clip that went around on Saturday as well when all this broke. I don't know if you saw it. Did you see the clip from, like, his rookie, I think it was a rookie year, against the Browns? Did you see this?
I did not.
So, you know.
But I remember early in his career, I felt like early in his career, I remember thinking, man, is this kid going to last? Because he got hurt a couple times.
Yeah, it was. I think it was the Browns game, but the Lions are terrible, and they're down late in the game, and Stafford gets smoked, just smoked, and he's mic'd up, and he's wincing, and like can barely get to the sideline. The doctors are coming out there. I mean, it's bad, And he's trying to be like, I got to go back in. And they're no, blah, blah, blah. Well, Jim Schwartz or somebody takes a timeout. And, like, just the name Jim Schwartz. Another thing. Look at Stafford's coaches.
Right.
Like, again, people will criticize Frank because that's what they want to do. He's gotten quarterbacks to play at a very high level throughout his tenure, and I think would do the same with Matthew. I call him Matthew like I'm his friend. All of a sudden, Schwartz takes a timeout, and Stafford's like, I can go back in. He goes back in and throws the game winner.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I just think there's a level of toughness that he brings as well that in that market maybe we just don't talk about enough. So I think Frank can strike the balance with Stafford of, okay, we can get him to be a little bit of a higher percentage guy, which, we saw Luck's percentage come up. We saw even Rivers come up from where he had been. Get Stafford there, but then still use the vertical nature that this offense, I think, just truly lacked last season. So a very affordable cap situation, 2 more years. I think it checks a lot of boxes, man. A lot of boxes. And I saw a couple numbers where I think the Lions dropped the most balls of any team in the league.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
When Stafford, now, is that some of that Stafford's 99-mile-per-hour fastball? Maybe, but still. This past year, they were terrible defense, special teams-wise, provide support. So, again, I don't think this move all of a sudden means, boom, Colts, final 2 teams in the AFC. Like, there's a lot of other things you got to take care of this offseason, but it gives you a higher potential at that position, and it could for the next handful of years. So, yeah, best, most realistic option to me, Chris. I like it. We'll get into a little bit more compensation and some other Stafford stuff and Twitter questions, but, when you're ranking the available realistic QBs, I don't know. Is there someone else that's caught your eye? I mean, sure, Watson and Rivers are all dreams. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want Darnold. I don't want Wentz.
No.
Thoughts on Dorsey going to Detroit? Does that, that there's been rumbles about if that helps the Colts with leverage?
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. Do you think the Lions owe Matthew Stafford anything? Like, do you think that they owe him, hey, you're going to have say in where you go?
It all depends. I think if a guy like that,
that's a really nice thing to do,
who's battled it out in that, like you said, in that environment with multiple coaches and always being on a pretty crappy team, more or less.
Yeah.
It would be a nice way to let someone exit without there being bad blood there at the end.
Yeah, I mean, what? Irsay paid Andrew Luck how much money?
Yeah.
20-some million,
Yeah.
Like, I guess Stafford isn't getting that. But I think in an ideal world, you're Brad Holmes, the new GM, you're Dan Campbell, new head coach, you'd move him out of the NFC. Now, it's interesting. I think when you make a list of teams that would want Matthew Stafford, I could list more NFC teams than AFC teams. New Orleans, Washington, Carolina, San Francisco, AFC teams, it's Colts, Steelers, Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe Denver. I don't know. I just feel like you can name a little bit more in the NFC. Who knows what'll happen with the Falcons and whatnot. But I guess is Detroit solely in the business to find the highest bidder? Is that all they care about? Like,
right.
Hell, we'll trade him to the freaking Bears for all we care. But if we get the right compensation, we're good. I think that is something that's interesting as well. Because part of me thinks Chris Ballard in a bidding war, that's just not his MO. Like, would he sit at, would he get to a price point where it's like, kind of like the Landon Collins thing. Landon Collins got to what, 80-some million? Okay, too rich,
right.
Too rich. But does quarterback mean that much? Are you in a much more desperate mode than you are in when it's free agency as well? I think those are some honest conversations as well that you have to have. So, I think a first and a third, that makes sense to me. But again, if all of a sudden you start competing with another team and, Stafford's from Dallas, he's, played at Georgia. I don't know. There's not a lot of when you talk about Rodgers and, people have, he's got a home in Southern California. He's from the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, San Francisco. What about the Rams if they, done with Goff, something like that. I don't know if there's that obvious of landing spots for Stafford, when you try to connect like home dots to him. I think Indianapolis would be pretty enticing. They seem to have enjoyed living in Detroit for what it's worth.
Right.
I mean, whatever, Midwest town and whatnot. So, but I think that is something, Chris, that is the unknown in this. Of Brad Holmes comes from the Rams. Dan Campbell, comes from what, New Orleans and Miami. Like, there's just no tie. Like, they have no ties to Matthew. They don't owe Matthew Stafford anything. Now, Lions ownership clearly feels like they do. They are collaborating on this, and I think Stafford informed them before, Holmes was hired and Campbell was hired, that, like, this is something Stafford wants to explore. But how much does that weigh in on this decision-making process? Like, this isn't a Watson thing where it's a no-trade clause and potentially he could decide, really, where he goes. So I think that is just kind of an unknown aspect to all of this, Chris, that we have to acknowledge.
Yeah, makes sense. Should we jump into Twitter questions, Kevin?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, this first one comes from Devin. Any chance, if the Packers are shopping Rodgers, that Ballard trades his soul?
Do you think Aaron Rodgers has a soul?
I think he does.
He's a unique individual.
He is. Recently donated about $500,000 to the Barstool Fund, which was
Did he really that much?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've watched the McAfee stuff with him every week. I mean, he's great. I mean, he's very honest, and I guess that's where you have to start, Chris, with the words he chose after Sunday's game. Aaron Rodgers doesn't remind me of Peyton Manning in a lot of ways. He reminds me of Peyton Manning in that they know full well the words coming out of their mouth and what they mean. Like Paul George, no.
Right.
Victor Oladipo, no. Aaron Rodgers, yes. Like, he knew full, and it's the exact opposite of what he said last year after they got their ass kicked by the 49ers in the NFC title game. He talked about the future. He talked about growing with Green Bay, things like that. Now, do I think this is fixable? Certainly. But, it's at least okay, I guess, to have the conversation, and certainly, I would explore what the trade. Now, the cap hit would be much bigger than Stafford. Stafford, I want to say, like, the yearly cash he's owed the next 2 years, like 23 and 20.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cheaper than Rivers.
Oh, yeah.
So that's very manageable. Now, would you throw him a new contract? Who knows? Obviously, Rodgers, I mean, that's, I think, north of 30, so that would be a different animal. Of course, Rodgers is the MVP of the league and whatnot. One last thing on that Green Bay game. Again, I know that we always talk about that 4th and 9 play, but I just keep on coming back to, Chris, like, Equinemius St. Brown dropping a 2-point conversion. I mean, Aaron Jones fumbling on the first drive of the second half. We get so, like, and when we started the Monday morning radio show, all of a sudden one of our hosts just like, all he wants to talk about is the 4th and 9 play. I'm like, okay, that is a play that we should talk about. But there are 7 or 8 others in that game that have put them into a situation where, how hard it is to convert a 4th and goal from the 9?
Mm-hmm.
The percentages of that have to be, like, extremely slim. Now, would I have gone for it? Yes. Like, you're in kind of a desperate mode at that point. But the percentages of that are so small. Like, 4th and goal from the 9 is a lot different than 4th and 9 from the 37. The field has shrunk big time. And, obviously on the 3rd and goal, and I don't say this because I had Aaron Rodgers' rushing touchdown as part of my parlay or anything, but on 3rd and goal, I'm yelling, run!
Yes.
Even to get it into 4th and manageable,
right.
if nothing else there. But that's me venting. Sorry.
All right, let's go to Chris, who has a question about Stafford already. So we're going to jump right in. Stafford seems like the Colts' best options for the short-term improvement at quarterback this offseason, but will be in high demand. Do you think a less than elite option like Fitzpatrick or Andy Dalton could get the Colts back to the playoffs?
Wait, what was the phrase he used there to describe Fitzpatrick and Dalton?
Less than elite options.
That's a great little phrase. That sounds like a PR person wrote that. Less than elite. I think I'm a good dad. I don't know, maybe a good husband, but I maybe refer to myself as less than elite. That could mean horrific. Or it could mean,
it's true.
Really good. I mean, let's be honest. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Andy Dalton are mediocre, average, not great, not bad. Well, That Chris, I laughed at that phraseology there. Chris, I appreciate the question, but like, is this where we're at as a franchise? I mean, like, Fitzpatrick and Dalton, you're trying to win Super Bowls here. I mean, God bless both those guys, and they've had respectable careers. I would say Fitzpatrick probably more so than Dalton. Dalton was a high second-round pick, but still, I mean, like, to me, it's this, man. You're all in and believing that this quarterback that you sign or trade for can lead you to a Super Bowl, or you embrace youth. And to me, Fitzpatrick and Dalton could not be any more. I don't know, maybe the Colts could get in the playoffs, but that's way too much pressure on the rest of the football team to get there. So, no, in no way, shape. Like, honestly, Chris, and I'm talking to you, Chris Presley, if you can't get Stafford, I'd probably just go all in on the draft.
Right.
And I don't know if the Colts would do that. That's me talking. But, like, to me, I don't know. None of those other guys are that enticing me. Could you win 8 games with Ryan Fitzpatrick? 9? Sure. Andy Dalton, but I don't. Not to mention, that's just a boring product to watch. I guess Fitzpatrick's kind of crazy, but I don't know. It's no.
This next one's from Josh. If Stafford comes to Indy, does that seal the deal on Indy as the best quarterback franchise in league history? Mentions Unitas, Harbaugh, Manning, Luck, Rivers, and Stafford beats any other city, right? Closest they can think of is Green Bay, maybe San Francisco. Might be true even if you don't count Unitas.
Wow, interesting. My mind certainly didn't go here with Stafford, but I appreciate Josh going there. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't count Unitas, right? I mean, that's Baltimore Colts. Yeah, Josh, again, I haven't given it too much thought. I would say, I don't know, maybe you need a few more Super Bowls just to, like, capture it. But, I mean, you talk individual quarterbacks and, like, the resume. Yeah, I mean, Manning's a Hall of Famer. Obviously, I assume Rivers is going to be a Hall of Famer. Stafford is outside looking in. We'll see what happens in this final, 5-ish years of his career. Luck, not a Hall of Famer, but, really good quarterback in his own right. So, yeah, I don't know. Like Dallas, Staubach, and Aikman, I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows if Dak leads him to a Super Bowl or something. That probably will never happen. But, yeah, Josh, sure. Granted, people in New England might just say, oh, well, let's look at Tom Brady's resume compared to everyone else combined. And I know that. Right. I mean, trust me, I was cheering for the Packers as much as anyone else in this market, but how can you not just have to me, at least I can speak for myself, and some people can't get there, which is perfectly fine. I have just the utmost respect for Tom Brady as a professional athlete, football player, whatever. And, like, I can also equally cheer against him. But holy 10 freaking Super Bowls? You know how hard that, like, right now, if your buddy was like, hey, I'll bet you Patrick Mahomes over under 7.5 Super Bowl appearances.
Right. You're thinking that's an absurd number.
That's an absurd number.
Yeah.
Like, Mahomes, like 7.5. And I'm not even saying, and that's like, when Tiger won his first Masters and Nicholas is like, oh, he's going to win 10 of these. I mean, Tiger's won, 5 and 6? I mean, that's incredible.
Right.
But it's not 10. Like, and football is just a totally different animal. So, yeah, I'm sorry for praising Brady, but I don't know. He might have cheated in that AFC title game, but
yeah.
Boy, Belichick can't be happy.
No. All right, this one's from Cody. It says, wouldn't it make sense for Detroit to trade Stafford out of the NFC into the AFC? Also, a lot of people are saying trade a first for him, but I don't think it'll take that much. Every time I see a big player traded, it's always a lot less than what I think the player is worth. What do you think it would take? Thanks. I love the podcast. Keep up the great work.
Appreciate that, Cody. First off, several good points in here, Chris. I would say, 95% of the time I see NFL trades with players, and I'm like, wait, what? That's all that player's worth?
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins probably comes to the forefront of that. But let's be honest, quarterbacks are different, and we don't really see quarterback trades, Chris.
No, you don't.
I mean, really at all. The last major one, unless I'm forgetting one, it's like, you go back to Cutler and that was a big package. And again, I'm probably forgetting an obvious one between now and then. So I think that when you look at where you're at and who would be pursuing him, it's got to take at least a first. I'd be stunned. I mean, it's an affordable contract. It's a guy that's 32 years old, and there's going to be a lot of people in demand because the quarterback market sucks this year.
Right.
So I just think it's going to take a first and a third, and we'll see. I mean, some people have thrown out, like, would you trade a player? I don't know if we had that in our Twitter questions this week. Is that get thrown into the mix at all? I know it's different than, like, the packages we've seen for Jamal Adams, Khalil Mack, even DeForest Buckner.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, different ages, different positions and whatnot, but, Chris, I'd be stunned if Matthew Stafford went for less than a first-rounder.
This next one comes from Jason. He says, Ballard said the Colts and Rivers were going to take a month to go back and talk. 5 days later, Rivers retires. Do you think Ballard had an opportunity to come up for someone better? If it would certainly be like Ballard to tell Rivers so he retires on his own versus being shut out in the cold.
All right. Terrific question, Jason. And this is, I guess, our little bit of Rivers, info here. When the whole Rivers retirement went down, and like I said, getting some crickets on trying to confirm things, I thought back to the Andrew Luck retirement and how that went. It was kind of an abomination of how that news broke. They hoped to have the press conference on Friday, and then Oliver Luck couldn't get into town, so then all of a sudden you're playing a preseason game on Saturday, and Scheffner's leaving his, mother-in-law's birthday dinner in New York, and, whatever. He's going outside, he's breaking the news, and next thing you know, Andrew Luck is getting booed walking off field. Like,
yeah.
And now you're having a press conference in the bowels of the stadium at 10:30 on a Saturday night, and everyone's emotional, and Ballard and Reich and Irsay, especially Ballard, looks like he just got kicked in the what. It's just rightly or wrongly, it just didn't work out well and how that news was broke. So, like, the way that the Rivers news broke, I think was pretty calculated on both parties.
Yes.
The Colts really wanted this to be done Phillip Rivers' way. And I totally get this. When you're in that position, you want to appease players. You want to make sure that they feel like they're being taken care of, and when they go off into their next endeavor or whatever, that lasting image of the organization isn't something of like, oh yeah, the Colts just leaked this to a bunch of people and that's how it broke.
Yeah.
And Phillip obviously wanted to do it in a very specific way. Now, I've gone back and forth on this, Chris. Did Phillip retire on his own, or did the Colts tell him, we're going to go in a different direction? How do you want us to handle this? And does Phillip say, oh, wow, well, I guess I'll retire on my own then?
Mm-hmm.
Because Phillip made it very clear. Either I play for the Colts or I'm done.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
I'm not doing this flying to a different city or whatever, taking the bus or whatever that van was he had from San Diego to LA. Like, none of that. So I've heard both sides of it. And I would say I've heard additional info on the Colts told Rivers they were going in a different direction.
I feel like based on the fact that he moved his family here, instead of keeping them in California another year, just go ahead and already sending them down to Alabama, kind of makes me feel like the Colts did tell him, hey, we're going to go in a different direction. Now, that could be way off base. No.
And again, I think that is a decent reason. There's more to it than just what you're saying there. There's, certainly additional info that supports the Colts telling Rivers that, okay, this is a two-way street in this decision-making process. Again, Rivers has a decision to make, and obviously the Colts had a decision to make in this process as well. And while Rivers was super emotional, kind of late games, things like that, he also gave every inkling of, like, he wanted to keep on playing.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, as long as I have the passion and I don't feel like my game is tapering off, I'm gonna play. So basically a couple things kind of like stand out about it of where would the Colts have confidence in telling Rivers we're going in a different path? Trying to connect dots in all of this can be difficult, but I'm trying to. Ed Dodd's interviews with the Lions, right? Opening at GM. Lions ownership was very open with their GM candidates of Matthew Stafford is not going to be part of the future here in Detroit. So Ed Dodd's knows that information. He interviewed. He obviously goes back to Indy and takes that information with him.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Colts know that Matthew Stafford is available. This all happens before Phillip Rivers decides to, again, in quotes, retire. Do the Colts then sit there internally and say, we've got a chance to go get Matthew Stafford. He's going to be on the open market. We feel like that's an upgrade over Phillip Rivers. We need to tell Phillip that we need to go in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
Again, is this stamped, locked in, set in stone, 100%? No. But, like, with just the lack of information we're getting on this and the fact that Phillip didn't have a press conference to announce his retirement. Like, he could have let Kevin Acee break the news and then the next day talk to local media from Indianapolis, from San Diego, get on Zoom. Now you have a camera. Like, that would be very normal. I mean, you see that all. Anthony Costanzo did it when he retired. Is this Rivers being like, well, I can't lie to you guys. Like, we're going to ask him, hey, why did you retire? And, like, are you really just going to say, oh, I wanted to coach high school football, 25 times, if that's not really what pushed you out the door? So, again, I just think that's all things to keep in mind with this. Now, what else besides a Matthew Stafford realizing he could be on the open market, what else could have assured the Colts that they had a different path? Is it Dallas saying, oh, yeah, we aren't going to sign Dak Prescott, and now all of a sudden he's on the open market? I don't think that's it. But to me, again, it's like, okay, they feel like Stafford is going to be very available, or they're locked in on trading up in the draft, which, again, all of this is going to sound very harsh, but if the Colts told Phillip Rivers we're going in a different direction, in my mind, Colts fans should be very happy. And again, that sounds harsh, but to me, you had to do something different to try and go further. So yeah, it's the Colts fans should be very happy that there is a clear plan about this, and that plan will involve a higher ceiling at that position. Now, if you strike out on Stafford and all of a sudden the trade up from the draft evaporates,
yeah,
who knows? Who knows where you're at right now? But I've just heard a little bit more chatter of that they told Phillip we're going in a different direction. Phillip had his kids enrolled, I think, at for high school next year here in the Indy area. I mean, again, you don't, like you said, you don't move your family up here if you really think it's going to be 1 year. And I kept on coming back to this. Isn't Phillip just too damn passionate to hang it up? I mean, like, yes, he's getting emotional. He knows this could be it. I'm sure he's maybe getting an inkling. And I mean, we saw, and I tweeted out the screenshots of some of the great anecdotes that Frank Reich shared with Peter King in the Monday Morning Quarterback on Monday about Phillip, and talked about how emotional these conversations were. Well, I mean, if it's this emotional, part of me, knowing Frank, thinks Frank had to make this decision along with Chris Bowden and Jim Irsay of, hey, we're going to go in a different direction, and that obviously is going to Frank's going to be super emotional about it given his relationship with Phillip. So I don't know. Maybe, and again, this is, somewhat, talking to people, but this is a little bit of connecting the dots as well. Maybe I'm totally off base on that, but Chris, I just think there's a little bit more evidence here. And, we haven't heard from Chris Ballard. We haven't heard from Frank Reich. Obviously, we didn't hear from Rivers with a conference call. Like, we haven't had a chance to get these people on the record about any of this stuff either. We just go off the statements that the Colts gave us. But like I said earlier, if this is true and that the Colts told Phillip that we're going in a different direction, you obviously have to have a plan that you feel really good about. And the Ed Dodds thing just kind of makes a little bit of sense to me. He interviewed with Detroit. They tell him they're going to let Stafford, be on the trade market. And now you feel good about one person that's out there. And then again, you have the draft as well if you're going to make a move up in that realm. So that's a little bit of additional info with Rivers and that. Again, I don't know if blindsided is the right word by it, but there were Colts players that weren't surprised he retired,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there's a little bit more evidence to point to this could have been a push out the door
Yeah.
than just a straight up, I'm going to retire. And I really have, as much as I want the Colts to be super transparent and super honest, I really have no issue with Chris Ballard or Frank Reich going to Philip and say, all right, we're going to go in a different direction. I know that sucks for you. How do you want us to handle it? And Philip can go home and say, all right, this is what they're doing. It's not what I want, but, let's kind of handle it how we want to handle it, and don't need to do a huge big presser and whatnot, and we'll, take the kids out of school and unenroll them, I guess, and, school for next year and move on. So, but boy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If that's true, man, you better be sure of that next move.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's you really, really better be sure of it. But yeah, it's just something that I wanted to mention, and interesting. Certainly, very, very interesting how all that played out.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll jump back in with.
Is that the longest answer ever to a Twitter question in the history of the podcast?
It was a great answer. I think Colts fans are going to enjoy that portion of the podcast.
And Chris, and I think I speak for all my colleagues. I mean, none of my colleagues really were able to get into this story. Like, it's a tough story. And trust me, there are people that I've reached out to that usually I have a decent back and forth relationship with that still haven't texted me back about it. Part of me thinks, well, the silence is another indicator of it's not what maybe it looked like initially. And again, part of me is like, and this is what you hate, what I hate selfishly about the breaking news business is just because you're always chasing.
Yeah.
And you always got to, okay, this agent gives you that, so now I've got to make it up for that agent. And this GM tells you this, so now you've got to say the GM's great and all. Like, it's just such a dangerous, slippery game that I hate to play. And I try to be a little bit more reactionary, a little bit more, analysis-based with it all. But whatever. That's for a July podcast.
All right, Blake says through the roster.
I might need a bathroom break.
Though the roster is very young and talented, the Colts will need to find long-term answers at quarterback, left tackle, defensive end, and quarterback one, arguably the game's most important positions. What stage would you consider this team? Rebuild is too strong, but it seems like the team has been built backwards from a team-building 101 standard.
That's interesting, Blake. Built backwards, I don't know, probably wouldn't necessarily use that, but I think, Chris, what has happened is like, and I think it's kind of a phrase I use more with Joey, but I guess you and I were kind of doing the pod during the draft last year. I'm a big, like, how do you pass the torch, from the whatever, what you're hoping for is the Freeney Mathis era would turn into the Jerry Hughes-ish era, and that really didn't work out. So I think what you happened in the late Polian, early Grigson era was you started to make moves to create the new left tackle one. Costanzo in 2011, Luck in 2012, Hilton in 2012. Now, Hilton worked out a lot better than you had thought he would as kind of a late third-round pick. But then you come back in 2013, and Bjorn Werner is that first-round pick after you trade Jerry Hughes. So, like, you were starting to do that then, and now it's like, well, Costanzo, gone. Luck has retired. Hilton potentially gone. And Bjorn Werner was, oh, boy. He was literally in the crowd at a London Fan Fest event when the Colts played over there in 2016, which, that was not good. Rebuild, built backwards. I don't know cars very well, Chris.
Yeah.
Do you?
No.
Yeah, I'm not a big car guy. The Bowen family are big Honda cars. If Honda would like to sponsor this podcast, feel free to slide in the DMs because, Honda really needs help. I feel like the Colts have like a nice like $75,000 mile, not dollar. That'd be really expensive. 75,000 mile car. Pretty good car. But like it maybe needs a new battery or new engine. And that might be like really substantial. And again, car people can just totally rip me a new one if this sounds horrible. And like that would be the quarterback and the left tackle. But like there's a lot of good other parts on that car. Yeah. So I don't want to like lose that car. And trust me, you guys heard me. I rattled off the dozen names, last week on the pod, and I won't bore you with that again. And obviously, I'll never be a car mechanic in the Indy 500, but I'll be in the Stan J, and I'll be cheering for it. Like, there's a lot to like, but there are a few big parts to the car that certainly need to be changed. So, Blake, it's a very good question. And, yeah, I appreciate you sending it in.
A part of the car might be coming from Ford, from Detroit. There you go.
That was good.
There you go.
Well, I mean, if that's not chemistry, I don't know what is. Chris Presley with the home run of the day right there. I wasn't even going there. And my wife used to work for Cars.com.
There you go.
Yeah. And when we got married, the priest in the homily acted like she sold cars, which was just a good laugh. So, yeah, shout out to Father Bob. Great individual.
All right, this next one's from Cam to the Colts. It says, mark my words. If there's no off-season program, the report about Eason only maybe competing for the backup job is true, and the quarterback that isn't a project doesn't fall in the draft. Jacoby will be the starter next year. I really don't see us giving up anything for Wentz or Darnold, and the free agents would be pressed to learn the limited time. Who else has familiarity and is capable, even if it's shaky at times, I should say.
Yeah, Chris, did you see those Vegas odds that I put out there last week? Jacoby was the favorite, right?
Yep.
Plus 300, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that had people. I'll tell you what, man. You write an article about Jacoby Brissett, and
yeah,
that gets the audience going a little bit. I mean, wow. Yeah, it's I'm trying to pull up those odds right now. Jacoby plus 300, Stafford plus 400. Obviously, this is before the Stafford trade, or the reports of a trade. Dalton plus 500. Jacob Eason plus 800. Brian Hoyer plus 1,000. What?
Yeah. Nope. Pass.
Oh, my God. You imagine? Yeah, Colts, 60,000 people allowed back in Lucas Oil. Come see our quarterback, Brian Hoyer. Yeah. You might want to wear a mask permanently, honestly, if you had to watch that again. Nothing like Big Ben plus 10,000.
Right.
Luck wasn't on there. I didn't see him on there. If not Stafford, who? I mean, that's a very you hate to be like that, like dialed into where you're at right now, but are you kind of there? I just think for both parties, it'd be good for Jacoby to go elsewhere. I mean, he is. I know every athlete's like, I want to be a starter. Jacoby is absurdly confident in his own abilities. Like, he is, again, borderline cocky, I think, which is fine, whatever. So I think he wants the best chance to start.
Mm-hmm.
And you've already said no to him twice. Like, the dude started 30 games. Do you need to see 46 games?
Right.
30 games here. Like, boy, I'd love to get those chances. I mean, those are precious. So I understand it. He's got familiarity, obviously, unlike anybody else with this offense. But you guys have heard me say before, it's part of why I wanted, if last season would have gone off the rails, I said Jacob Eason should dress over Jacoby. I've seen it. I know what he got. Let's see somebody else.
Yeah. All right, this one's from Tyler, who says, this question is potentially a little controversial.
Oh, boy. Wow.
All right, strap in. Get ready
preface
for
that
this
in, it's kind of like, let's lock in. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. After some thought, I think we should trade Darius Leonard. Hear me out. I think Darius' perceived value is higher than his value in terms of wins added. He needs paid, and he's certainly going to get paid. Khalil Mack and Jamal Adams both got 2 first-round picks out of their trades. With the way Ballard drafts, I believe the combined value of 2 firsts are better than Leonard himself. I think if he was a corner, you'd say pay him and be done with it. But in my opinion, if we can use the first in a more important position like left tackle or cornerback, it would make a significant difference. I think you save some salary cap, you take advantage of the hype and potential overall valuation of the draft, and draft a linebacker at, say, 85% of the player that Leonard is, and you are still happy.
Okay. Well, first off, Tyler, I love counter thinking. I love these sort of questions, Chris. It's why I'm so passionate about involving Twitter questions every single podcast, and we'll continue to do that. So I don't want to discredit Tyler at all. But I will disagree with the aspect of kind of the early part of the question when he says, I think Darius's perceived value is higher than his value in terms of wins added. I think his perceived value in Indianapolis is higher than any other team in the league. Like, the Colts have made it extremely clear his presence at will linebacker in this defense and his presence as a leader mean a whole lot to Matt Eberflus and Chris Ballard. And so I don't think Seattle or Pittsburgh or Dallas would necessarily view Leonard in the same light the Colts do, based off, again, their system, which we talk about those hot spots in the system. Will linebacker and slot corner and the 3 technique a little bit. Matt Eberflus wants that triangle. And then secondly, again, him as a leader, which, Costanzo not here, okay? Rivers not here. Potentially Hilton not here. Potentially Justin Houston not here. You are kind of, there aren't a lot, I think there's some leaders up and coming, but like Leonard is clearly the most up and coming of that, not only vocally, but I think just in his effort and how he plays. So I don't think you should overlook that. But I just, you got to remember his position and how that is perceived around the NFL. Jamal Adams, Khalil Mack, Minkah Fitzpatrick, I mean, those guys, it's just a little bit different than how people view an off-ball linebacker. Off-ball linebacker, in a way, it's kind of viewed as like a guard on offense. It's just not the premium value. Look at how much those guys get paid compared to some other spots on the field.
Right.
Like Leonard has put up Hall of Fame type numbers through his first 3 seasons. If you put up Hall of Fame type numbers at left tackle or edge rusher or corner through 3 seasons, oh my gosh. I mean, you'd be breaking the bank like none other. Leonard's going to break it, but he's not going to, set it on fire. Now, I do hear you in like, it's not the craziest thought to me because Ballard is drafted linebacker as well. We've always thought Bobby Okeriki's more of a Will than a Mike. But I just think Leonard means too much internally. Now, if you're going to tell me you're going to trade Darius Leonard for, the 4th pick or 5th pick, you do it 100 times out of 100. But I just don't think you're trading Darius Leonard and getting, I don't know, multiple first-round picks back.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm totally off on that, but I don't think you. And what's the message you send to your locker room? One of your homegrown talent, one of your own, seems to do everything right. That would be something I'd be a little bit worried about as well.
This next one's from Trepp, who says, I would have to say that our edge rush was the most disappointing part of the season. DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart did an excellent job in the middle, but no pressure from the edges whatsoever. With quarterback and left tackle at a need, how would you address this offseason with the edge rushing? Could Carl Lawson be a possible fit from Cincy? Do we bring back Houston? I think we get a quarterback and a left tackle of the future. We need to pick them in the first 2 rounds.
Trepp, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do kind of a tiered free agency look, kind of green, yellow, red, and something we've done on Beers with Bone before, but just kind of update that. I'll probably have Houston around the yellow. Not enough consistency from him to push him into the green. Now, he was available for every game, which I think is notable. And the young guys, again, haven't really emerged. But I will say, Chris, this edge rush group is actually pretty intriguing to me. I mean, Lawson had a huge game against Pittsburgh on Monday night there late in the game, or late in the season. Romeo Cora, a Notre Dame product, former Lion as well. He's a guy that I think is on that list. They aren't ideal, maybe 4-3 fits, but Bud Dupree is also a free agent this year. We saw the guy in the for the Bucs, which I think this could be a huge factor in the Super Bowl. Shaq Barrett, again, has been very, very productive. Matthew Judon for the Ravens as well. So, and there is Hassan Reddick, who I know has pretty much been a bust for the Cardinals. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Colts are either going to take him or Hooker at 15 overall back in 2017 when Reddick, I think, went 2 or 3 spots ahead of Hooker. So is that a name, someone you were interested in 4 years ago, kick the tires on, a la Rhodes, a la Ebron, etc. But, yeah, Trepp, I part of me kind of likes if I can upgrade at edge rusher with a younger multi-down presence, I'd probably go that route. And then if the right one falls to you in the draft, certainly, and then just pray with Toure and Banagoo and even Tyquan Lewis. And I know Lewis is better than those other 2, but still, I don't know if he's an unquestioned 16-game starter yet.
This one's from JJ. Says Grixon was 49-31 as a Colts GM. After 4 years, Ballard is 32-32. My opinion is that Rivers' retirement was a stroke of good fortune for Ballard. He has been on the honeymoon for 4 years, and Rivers' exit will give Ballard 3 more years of a leash with no pressure. He'll get another stopgap quarterback buying another year or 2, or a rookie that needs development another year or 2, In any scenario, he will have more excuses for mediocrity. See the Luck injury, Luck retirement, Jacoby needs time, Rivers is decent, no quarterbacks we like, etc. from the past. How long before there's any pressure to win in the playoffs? Are we perpetually a year away from being 2 years away? If you had a 4-year honeymoon, Rosie Bowe could dip her toes in the ocean each morning after her bottle. Nice gig if you can get it.
Hey, Rosie Bowe does love the water. So JJ, that is spot on there. Yeah, I mean the pressure has to be there. You know, like we've said before in this podcast. I don't call last season great. I call it a nice season. But I also realize that there are more goals that this organization did not obtain last year that aren't just the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Like winning the division. You know, that hasn't been done since 2014. Winning a playoff game as well. I mean, it's been, I think I looked it up, you know, Colts have won one playoff game the last 6 years. I want to say like over 20 franchises have won at least multiple playoff games in that span. Like we aren't used to the Colts being in kind of that bottom tier of that. So I think those are just, again, not Super Bowl goals, but goals in the pathway to getting there that that need to start to be achieved. What was Tampa? I want to say Tampa was the first wild card team to make the Super Bowl in 7 years.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure. Like I think it's been a 1 or 2 seed. Yeah. And obviously Tampa went on the road for all those games. Now COVID, you know, I'm sure helped out their ability to win on the road, but still, it just goes to show you not only winning your division, but getting a 1 or a 2 seed. And now, you know, there's only one bye, but, you know, getting a bye I think is so beneficial as well there. So, you know, Chris had that quote, which is a funny quote at the end of the year presser of, you know, if I take a quarterback, you all get off my ass, this and that. You know, I get it. Making that mistake is very costly. Like if you swing and miss, you might not get that other opportunity. But I think you could also argue, like, if you don't take that chance, or you don't commit to quarterback in a more serious manner for multiple years, now are you squandering some prime years for the names we mentioned on last week's podcast? That's a real like, you know, can a Band-Aid keep you afloat to the point where you're missing out on opportunities to sustain that a little bit longer? I think that's also kind of a fair statement that you got to be honest with yourself there. So yeah, I mean, JJ, pressure's on. I mean, we've talked about that. I guess maybe it's pressure from this podcast. I don't know if it's necessarily pressure from others out there, but I do think, like I've said before, I think Chris and Frank are the right people. Yeah. And they face some really, really big decisions. Having said that, and these decisions will inevitably decide their fate.
Mm-hmm. This is from Big Bama. Will the inconsistent play of Rock, will the forgotten man Marvell Tell get a look at possibly being on the other outside corner that the Colts need heading into the offseason, or do you look into free agency or possibly the draft? I think this defense is a speed edge rusher and a solid outside corner away from truly being a top 5 defense.
Yeah, Big Bama, thank you for the question. You know, the Marvell Tell situation, Chris, is, boy, I'm curious to see what he looks like when he comes back. I was intrigued by the little bit of time he played, but I also acknowledge this dude made a position switch and just missed the whole year of development. I mean, that's valuable time that he missed. Physically, he's got the right traits, I think. But again, was a safety at USC, and now he's making that switch to an outside corner, but I do like his frame a lot. In no way can I sit here and say, oh, yeah, Marvell Tell, you come back from opting out and you're our starting corner. Mm-hmm. No. I think, and that's why, and I'm going to post it tomorrow to the site, Xavier Rhodes is the most important free agent on this team.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to cost a lot, but when you had to go into your corner depth, hell, when you had Rock out there, you were getting exposed a bit. So and boy, you didn't even play Kansas City, and we saw what Kansas City can do when they, oh yeah, Buffalo, who are your corners that we're going to guard Tyreek Hill in the slot and this and that? I mean, it's, you know, it can get ugly quick there. So I like Marvell Tell, but at the same time, in no way can I say, yeah, welcome back, here's your starting job, or here's a starting job, not even the starting job that he had.
Yeah. All right, this is from Chris. He wants to know about Nelson's future. Do you think the Colts could move him to left tackle, but it would be temporary for like a year or two, and then possibly move him back to guard? Or do you think that if he goes to left tackle, then you just keep him there?
No, I don't. I kind of like that idea by Chris. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a permanent thing. Again, I feel like the draft board is going to dictate a whole lot with how the future at tackle is decided. Danny Pinter's readiness, maybe a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, if you get, let's say you put Nelson over there for a year, Chris, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there at whatever, pick 26 next year, and the right tackle's staring you in the face, yeah, go ahead. And if that can improve the overall outfit to the line, and maybe by that point, Mark Lewinsky's a free agent, and Danny Pinter's moved over to the right guard. You know, something like that. So, yeah, I could see that being a short term. You know, I saw, and I think Stephen Holder was kind of tweeting about Nelson earlier today, and I want to say he used the phrase, moving Nelson to left tackle would be a panic move, and I totally respect Stephen and his opinions. I don't think I'd call it a panic move. I mean, to me, a panic move is like handing Marvell Tell the starting job. Like, I mean, Quentin Nelson is still I mean, the Colts tweeted out the stat today. I mean, what, him and Barry Sanders, only 3-year All-Pros to start their careers in the last 30 years? I mean, that's effing absurd.
Yes.
So, again, to me, it's not a panic move. It's something you would have to be taking a risk on because you haven't seen him play a whole lot over there. But yeah, I think that there are a little bit other moves that, you know, you could look into of stopgap wise. And I guess Nelson for a year or two over there would be one of those moves.
This next one's from Danny, who first starts off by thanking you for the great coverage this year.
Thanks, Danny. I appreciate that.
He wants to know what's the odds of the Colts trading up to the top 15 to get a quarterback and then back into the top 40 to 50 picks to get a left tackle. And is that something Ballard would do? From his opinion, he would trade the first 4 to 5 rounds of this draft and the first next year to land these centerpieces and fill other holes in free agency. He mentions wide receiver, cornerback, and defensive line depth.
Yeah, it's you know, if you move from where you at right now, 21, if you move to like 13, that's going to cost you probably your second rounder. So then if you want a second rounder again under this scenario, you know, to get a future second, you probably have to give up a future first. I think that's kind of how like the whole future pick thing works. I probably wouldn't do that. You know, I try to get a left tackle as more of a stopgap in free agency, and still come back and draft one like in the third round, and develop that guy. Obviously, you're worried about edge as well, but look, in an ideal world, folks, you'd be able to cross off several of these needs. I just don't think. It's why you sit here right now, Chris, and you think to yourself, man, if Kamoko Toure or Rock Yassin or drafting a left tackle, but that didn't happen, so let's just go with Toure or Rock or Banigou. If one of them had really shown up for you, now all of a sudden when you look at the 5 big needs, quarterback, left tackle, I still think wide receiver 1. Now, again, I'm bullish on Pittman. I think Pittman's going to be very good, but it's still an uncertain spot. And then edge rusher and cornerback. Boy, again, if Toure or Rock, let's say just Toure. So now all of a sudden you're looking at, okay, we feel good about Toure at edge. We feel good about Pittman at receiver. Now it's quarterback, left tackle, and corner. You re-sign Rhodes. Okay, there's corner. You've got some money. You go stopgap and left tackle. Now all of a sudden you can trade up in the draft and pick that quarterback if you don't go Stafford. So that's where just the unfortunate nature of Toure, Banigou, and Rock not giving you that confidence puts you in scramble mode where you can't cross off everything in this offseason. Right. You just can't.
Jordy asks, is the Rivers retirement a blessing in disguise for the Colts? You think this may have forced their hands at something long-term in the draft or via trade?
Well, Jordy goes back to the earlier point. You know, did he make his decision 100%? Now, the result is the result. He's gone. And again, I hate to sound harsh, but yes, this is a blessing in disguise. This is great. And great, again, might not be the right word, but I think running it back with him would have stunted things. And I have nothing against the type of quarterback and the effort that Philip Rivers just gave you.
This one comes from Johnny, who is an avid listener over in the UK. Loves the podcast and feels like it's always a place to go for sensible Colts analysis.
Oh, I love that, Johnny. Thank you, and best to you and everyone else across the pond.
Said, when the Colts signed Rivers last offseason, do you think they did so after thoroughly analyzing the potential available quarterbacks into 2021? Seems to me that Rivers retiring is just another season, and after just one season and leaving us in draft no man's land with the picks in the 20s is a very possible outcome. So I'm hoping there's a rough plan already mapped out for the situation. Or do you think the lure of such an immediate upgrade in going from Jacoby to Rivers last offseason was so attractive that they didn't think too far ahead to this offseason and instead will be relying on Ballard's improv skills?
Yeah, it's a good question, Johnny. And again, thank you for listening. I appreciate that. I think you always have to, Chris, kind of look 1 year ahead. It's kind of how you look at the quarterback class here in 2021. The 2022 quarterback class doesn't sound, nearly with the top-end depth that you have here this season. But I also sit here and think they thought better than 50-50 chance Rivers would be back for 2 years. Now, clearly something has changed, and again, is that the Stafford carrot, or who knows? But Irsay's sign-off is something we need to keep in mind, too. He has say in this, and I don't want to lose sight of that. Either. But yeah, I think certainly you always have to think 1 year ahead with the full notion that a lot can change in that time span.
Yeah. Okay, this is from Trouble Man. Kevin, love the pod, but I'm starting to take some issue with the fans' questions.
Ooh.
Oh. Specifically the JT draft debate. Why be disappointed in a great production if it's possible if it positively impacts other aspects of the game? This shouldn't be a grass is greener situation if your grass is already green. Taylor is performing well. It's obvious the offense performs better when the running back excels, and it's obvious JT is doing things that other running backs can't. So why complain? When we took it out of his hands, the offense looked terrible. Why are we debating something that should be used more rather than less when we clearly perform worse when it's not the primary option? And no, you can't just plug and play a running back position over the course of the entire season. There's a reason you don't start a closer or why designated hitters aren't always in the lineup. Let's not get sidetracked by 2 good run games by a random in the season. How do we fare the rest of the season? Think macro, not micro.
Trouble Man, thank you for that. That was pretty in-depth. That was passionate.
Yeah.
Well, I guess let's start there, Chris. I mean, when you talk macro, not micro, I think a lot of that is how people view investing at running back. Micro with running backs, you can benefit big time, in the here and now. You can get a lot of immediate production and live in a much more of a kind of a Madden dynasty role. The macro is, we're going to have a philosophy where we're not going to invest a lot at running back because championship teams have indicated that you don't need to invest a lot at running back to still get that production. And again, these are all different philosophies that go into roster building. You guys have heard me say this before. Ryan Grigson had the belief that the championship teams that he was a part of with the Rams and the Eagles, they did not invest a lot particularly in the interior of their offensive line. We've talked about it before. Even the Colts, that Super Bowl team, the interior of that O-line was not heavily invested in. Now, obviously, Chris Ballard comes here and is like, oh boy, I'm going to pay Ryan Kelly as the highest paid center. We're going to draft Quentin Nelson 6 overall. We're going to have a different philosophy there. And obviously over time, Grigson realized, okay, I've got to change it up. And he drafted Kelly late there in his tenure. So, again, this is much more of a philosophical thinking at running back. And I'm okay with people that literally look at the Jonathan Taylor draft pick and say, yeah, probably not what I would do. And you still have some people that wouldn't draft Quentin Nelson at 6 overall. I mean, I feel like we hear that debate on our airwaves a lot.
We do.
About, oh, no, I just don't think a guard is worthy of that pick. And, it's funny, I was on the morning show last week, and Big Joe was really disappointed after the first set of games that Cam Akers, I think it was only Cam Akers, was the only 100-yard rusher to start in the playoffs. I'm like, you don't see a lot of 100-yard, like Cam Akers right now, at this point of the playoffs, how many games have there been? 2, 6, 12? 12 playoff games so far? He's the only 100-yard rusher through 12 games. Look at the 300-yard passers. Like, it's just how the game has kind of evolved to where it's more running back by committee to get it done and less of this, here's the bell cow, here's the 28 carry guy. Like, it's easier to take away Derrick Henry than it might be to take away an elite passing offense.
Yeah.
So, again, I just think that's how people view where you're at the running back spot. And it's nothing against Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor is I guess it goes back to my Pacer thing of like, I was always a big team, move Miles Turner, not because I thought Miles was a useless player by any means. I just think two bigs and you need to improve guard play to win it all. That's how I look at it, or to make a deep playoff run. Now you've got Karis LeVert, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, now that's the type of guard that I thought you'd want to be getting to move Miles Turner. So now you're in a better situation, I think, to make it work. That's how I think people view running back more as a luxury in today's NFL of like, yeah, if we can get a great elite back, that's awesome, but James Robinson can be undrafted and run for 1,000 yards, or Aaron Jones, is probably a better example on more of a winning team. I don't think he was a very high pick as well. So Jonathan Taylor is a phenomenal talent. He's a great football player that certainly improves this football team without a doubt. But I think when you talk macro to micro, there's people that will sit here and just be like, can you guarantee me that running back is going to be here at age 28 or 29?
Mm-hmm.
Versus could pick 41, and again, there's no guarantee that this would have happened, but could pick 41 have been whatever, a corner or an edge rusher that can produce for you at that same age.
Yeah.
But Trouble Man, I appreciate the question. You can take issue with fans. Everyone's passionate about it. I don't have a problem with that question. And I certainly will hear people out and say Jonathan Taylor is a great pick. Unbelievable draft pick. And that is exactly the route that you should go. Dude just finished third in the NFL in rushing. Like, that's damn impressive. And then the counter to that, people will be like, oh, your biggest win of the year, you beat the Titans by what, 3 scores down there? And Jonathan Taylor had like 10 rushing yards. People will immediately counter with that as well. So running back to me, I'm probably more I'm not like totally anti-running back on day 1 or day 2, as some people are, but you guys have heard me say I'm probably more of a, 4th rounder-ish, and that's just kind of how you operate with that position.
This one comes from Ryan with questions about the future of the quarterback for the Colts. He has a little scenario for you.
I love it.
Wants to know which one you're going to take. If you get Aaron Rodgers for the remainder of his career with an extra late first rounder for the next 3 years, or you get Trevor Lawrence, but you don't have a first rounder at all for the next 4 years. As good as Rodgers and the picks would be, Trevor Lawrence would be just too good to pass up for him. What are your thoughts there?
Wait. I'm getting Rodgers and an extra first rounder?
Yes.
Huh. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. If I'm getting Aaron Rodgers an extra first rounder, I'll package those extra first rounders and we'll go move up, and we'll make sure Aaron Rodgers is happy with it. We'll go move up for that quarterback when he decides that he wants to retire.
Mm-hmm.
So and I guess I'm only getting Trevor Lawrence for 4 years. I'm only getting Lawrence for an extra year. Yeah, I'd go with Rodgers, and we'll make the biggest blockbuster deal to trade up for that quarterback in 4 years or 3 years or whatever. Yeah, I'll take my chances with Rodgers though. Is he's that's an interesting personality to bring in your locker room.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that.
Yeah. Okay, Christian wants to know about the edge rush. It's Ballard's biggest weakness that he's been drafting, and do you see them grabbing a free agent in the spot? The notable ones that he mentioned that you've already touched on some of them in the podcast: Judon, Melvin Ingram, Bud Dupree, Shaq Barrett, Ngakoue, Levante David, Tyrone Crawford, or do you see us re-signing Autry in Houston and getting a cheaper vet like Everson Griffin, Alden Smith, and Ansah?
Yeah, I mean, I do think you got to get a little more pop off the edge, Chris, like we talked about. Houston and Autry, I'm not writing them off as don't re-sign. I'd probably re-sign Autry more than I would Houston. And I know people would disagree with that. But a little bit younger, a little bit more versatile. I would think a little cheaper. I don't know. But, I kind of like one of those younger edge rushers amongst that mix.
Yeah. All right, Colts Girl has this question, and is there anyone on the Colts with value you would use in a trade to try and move up. May require a move up twice. Once players, then picks.
So is this the player one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a good one. Colts girl, thank you for this. The name that I keep on coming back to, Chris, is Bobby Okereke. And again, I know I said earlier, would you move Leonard and slide Okereke over there? But it comes back to Chris Ballard is drafted really well at linebacker. And while Okereke is a very valuable part to this football team, can you draft, a linebacker in the 4th round? What about EJ Speed? That's a guy I feel like he was a 5th round pick. I don't know. I just, part of me, or some people have thrown Paris Campbell at me. Hey, what's Paris Campbell's value?
Right.
Like, what? I don't know. I don't think he carries a whole lot of value. I think he can be a really good player, but that's a big risk for another team to take.
Yeah.
I can't see anyone else, really, to be honest with you. Willis, Blackman, Kenny Moore. No, I can't trade any of those offensive linemen. You're already looking for a left tackle.
True.
So, yeah, Okereke's probably the one.
Here's a question from John. Imagine Eason receiving the hands-on development in the college at Washington instead of with the Colts. Where would he be drafted? Would he be a first-rounder?
John, I think it's a great point. Really, it's when I did the film breakdown last year, which we did in the podcast again, for those that can't get enough Jacob Eason and need just injected into your veins a little bit more, check out that pod. I want to say May, June, something like that. We did a full pod, I think, on Eason, and just I watched about a half dozen games that he had at Washington as a senior and broke down a lot of that. And I think in that article or on that pod, I mentioned, like, if that dude would have came back to Washington, who knows? I mean, he might have gone top 10. Now, that might sound ludicrous to a lot of people, but I think 13 games of reps for him is so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to get that in the NFL. I was thinking about this the other day because I just posted an Eason story. Last 4 years of football, I think Eason has been available to play like 55 games. He's played in 16. 16 to 55?
Right.
Like, it's the unfortunate nature that comes with that position. You think of, like, all the could-have-beens. I think of reps of just Brady. What if Bledsoe never gets hurt?
Mm-hmm.
You guys just get thrown in the fire, and they react to it a little bit better, or they grow from it, Peyton's 3-13 his first year. Throws the most picks in NFL history. Boom. Second season. Glorious.
Right.
And the rest is history. There's so many guys that I just think you never truly know. And that's what I was talking about last week with Eason, about there's this puzzle. Jacob Eason is a puzzle. The Colts feel like he found a few more of the pieces this past year. Mental, professional work ethic, classroom, all the stuff that goes into being a quarterback. But there's so many more pieces about his physical, like the red jersey is now off. Live bullets, it's real, show me it.
Yeah.
That's the unknown. So, yeah, John, it's we can sit here and say if he would have been at Washington and got the hands-on and played that final season there, it would have pushed him into the first round. But remember, you can't just then equate that and say he needs to be playing right now, because you're saying that with 13 more games of experience. That's why he's developed further, or why he's grown and all that. So, terrific question, John. Thank you.
Tristan asks, is it safe to say...
I know we're going long. Are you good, man?
Yeah.
You good? Okay, good. I know this has been a little bit longer one, but in the offseason, I start ranting a little bit.
That's fine. We just got a handful left.
Cool.
Tristan wants to know, is it safe to say that nobody, including you, saw Phillip Rivers retiring this year? Is this the most shocking quarterback retirement in Colts history?
Am I missing the joke? I feel like that's a joke, right? Tristan, come on now. I assume he's joking, Chris. I don't know. I was surprised. I mean, I think I don't know, in the week before I kind of lessened it to 60-40 that he would come back. So I had come back a little bit, but yeah, I was still surprised. I just thought his passion, again, if he did retire on his own, I thought his passion would lead to him wanting to scratch that itch for one more year. And I also I didn't know if the Colts would be risky enough. But maybe they have been.
Kevin, Chris wants to know what NFL teams might be interested in Jacoby this upcoming offseason, and whose scheme might he fit?
Oh, Chris, I'd be lying to you if I looked into Jacoby Brissett possible scheme suitors. I've always said New England. McDaniels and Belichick drafted him.
Yep.
And I think we sometimes forget about this about Jacoby. He was a third-round pick. That's high. It's higher than Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins or some other starters in this league. So, what's going to happen in Washington? What are they going to do? What are the Saints going to do?
Right.
Is it Winston? Is it Taysom Hill? Is it a competition? Do we even have quarterback competitions anymore? I don't know. Chicago? Yeah, I guess I'm interested, Chris, but those are some teams that come to mind. Carolina, I don't know. Some people seem to be like, yeah, they're done with Bridgewater, but then they've got a top 10 pick. Do they just go there? So,
yeah, it's going to be a fun quarterback carousel this offseason, to say the least.
Without a doubt.
Okay, this is from Brian. He wants to know what the cost would be for us to trade for Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. Knows that with Ryan's contract off the books, that may entice the Falcons to move him. But would you do the trade? It's not an ideal situation for the future, but in his opinion, we would become an instant Super Bowl contender, maybe even the favorites for around 3 years.
That's a ton of money. Matt Ryan's cap hit, I don't have it in front of me. It's gargantuan. I want to say if you combine those two, Ryan and Julio, it's like over $60 million cap hit. So, and I think they're both under contract for several years. So I don't, I like Matt Ryan. I like Julio Jones. I probably liked him a lot more in 2013.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump down to Steven. What will it take to get the number 1 overall pick and draft Lawrence?
Steven, that'd be a lot, man. I would say, 5 day 1, day 2 picks? Combined first, second, third rounders?
It's going to take a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe 5 isn't. I don't know.
Okay, this one's from John. Looking into the history of trade-ups in the draft, it seems like trading into the top 5 historically has cost teams multiple first and multiple day 2 picks, while trading up to the 8 to 12 range cost teams 2 first, if that. If Ballard sees his guy at quarterback in this draft, do you think he will be patient and let the guy fall to 8 to 12, or do you think he will give up a boatload of picks to the Jets or the Dolphins?
Yeah, John, thank you. Trade up. I think you trade up to secure a spot, Chris. It's interesting. I kind of forgot this, but I've done a lot more research into the quarterback, situations. I forgot that Buffalo, when they took Josh Allen, they first traded up from 21 to 12. They traded Cordy Glenn, their left tackle, to Cincy, and then they traded up from 12 to 7. So it's like they got up. They went through free. I think they did that right before free agency started. Got to 12, and then they kind of saw free agency fell. So okay, these teams need a quarterback. These teams, and then they made that next move on draft night, and picked right after the Colts did with Quentin Nelson. So, Chris, will you pull up the top 10 draft order if you don't mind? I don't have it memorized off the top of my head.
No problem.
Obviously, I've got Jags and Jets early on, but I want to make sure that we have this right, because I remember looking at teams kind of 10 to 20, and outside of 49ers and Patriots, I didn't see a whole lot of teams in that area that would be drafting a quarterback. So feel free to rattle off those teams whenever you pull it up.
You have the Jacksonville Jaguars at 1.
Okay, well, I guess let's just go team by team. Jacksonville drafting QB.
New York Jets.
QB.
Miami Dolphins.
I think they keep Tua.
Atlanta Falcons.
Gotta think QB, right?
Probably, yeah. You're getting towards the end of Ryan.
Yeah. Okay.
Cincinnati Bengals.
No.
Philadelphia Eagles.
Is that a no? Was Sirianni hired to keep Wentz?
That's what we said earlier in the pod. It's just gonna. Sirianni's got a lot on his plate.
He does. Where's Philly at? 5 or 6?
They're at 6.
Okay. Who's at 7?
7 is Detroit.
Who's 8?
8 is Carolina Panthers.
Okay.
9 Denver Broncos. 10 Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, 49ers like 12 or something?
The 49ers are 12th.
Okay, I think you got to get – who's at 6?
6 is the Philadelphia Eagles.
I think that's where you got to get to. Because, I mean, you said 7 was
7's Detroit.
and Carolina.
8's Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to get above those two, right? I mean, if you think the 3 QBs are going to Jacksonville, New York, and Atlanta, that's 1, 2, 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then, obviously, Burrow with Cincinnati at 5. You hope Wentz at Philly at 6. So that's where I think you got to get to.
Right. Because Detroit's taken one.
Because Detroit's taken one, and Carolina could take one.
Yes.
So, if you believe 4 of them are going to go that high, which happened in 2018, 4 of them went in the top 10, that's where you got to get to. So, yeah, when you talk 8 to 12 range, John, I think that might be a hair on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Just a hair on the outside of it.
All right, 2 more left. We're going to stick here with this quarterback scenario with Devin, who's a Colts fan from Panama City Beach, Florida.
Ooh, is that the spring break spot?
It is. I've never been, but
Yeah.
That's where everyone goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not privileged enough to go there, but I've heard a lot of water bottles filled with vodka in Panama City Beach.
Yeah. Be careful when you roll over the next morning to grab a drink of water.
Yeah,
it might not be it.
Yeah, that could be. Oh, good morning.
Do you think the Colts should risk it for the biscuit and trade up to number 2 to get Fields or Lawrence, depending on who goes number 1? Says, I know it will cost a lot, but when it comes to securing that position with the superstar, can you really put a price on it?
Yeah, you probably can't put a price. I love that Bruce Arians quote. Oh, boy. No risk it, no biscuit. I'll never forget him saying that so many times. I'll never forget Bruce Arians at the Colts Christmas party back in 2012.
Oh, gosh.
What a legend. Fields is the interesting one to me, Chris. He's the one I keep on coming back to of just, dream scenario. If somehow the Jets are like, all right, we're going to, Sam Darnold we're going to stick with them, and they do something different, and all of a sudden Miami takes, the Jets maybe would take Devontae Smith at 2, and then, Miami takes, what's his name, the Oregon left tackle at 3, and then all of a sudden you're at 4, and Fields and Wilson are on the board. Boom. Yeah, do you go up a little bit? And the Trey Lance thing, I'm starting to get a little bit more intrigued. My intrigue with Lance is probably a little bit more of curiosity than it is like belief. Whereas I think Fields can get it done. Again, a little bit more of a belief sort of thing with Fields versus Lance. But yeah, I would. To answer your question, with a superstar, can you really put a price on it? Nope. Can anyone name the trade package that the Chiefs gave up for Patrick Mahomes?
Right.
Can anybody name the trade package that Texans gave up for Deshaun Watson? Nope.
Absolutely.
Nope.
All right, this last one is from Damon. Says, hello, Kevin, and welcome back, Chris. What's up?
That was an old one.
Yeah.
You could tell, Damon. See, again, a lot of these questions have been, in the old can for several weeks.
Besides winning a Super Bowl, what does Ballard have to do to be known as the best Indy-era Colts GM? Is he already on this path? Says, I love the players he's bringing in, and I think he hit a home run after the McDaniels debacle. Thanks again, and go Colts.
Damon, thank you for the question. Sorry it's taking a while to get to it, but it's part of the offseason life here. Besides the Super Bowl, I hate to say it, but Bill Polian is he was a pretty good general manager here and drafted several Hall of Famers, which honestly, Chris, looks like he's drafted 2 of them. As hyperbole of a statement as that might sound like, but certainly Big Q and the Maniac are on their way there. This is such an unfair question, to be honest with you. Bill Polian's one of the best architects in the history of the game. Right. So you talk Indy era, obviously Polian was huge in that era. Polian came in what? I don't think he drafted Marvin, but I think he drafted everyone else besides that. So, you got to win a Super Bowl. I don't know if you draft 7 Hall of Famers. If you draft 7 Hall of Famers, I don't know how you don't win a Super Bowl. So I'd assume that would just happen. But, yeah, Damon, in this league, that's how you're evaluated. So
right.
But, no, as I've said before, and I'm going to come out on Wednesday, Thursday with articles evaluating Frank Reich at this point in his tenure here in Indianapolis. Same thing with Chris Ballard. That'll come out on Thursday as well. And I think that'll give you a little bit of a clearer picture on just what I think of Ballard and Reich through the first 3 or 4 years of their tenures.
All right. Well, the portion of me stuttering through questions is over.
No, man. There were a lot of them. I know I always throw a ton at you each week. So And thank you for sticking with us. I know it's been a longer podcast, probably one of our longer ones in a while, but that's what happens when it's been a newsy start to the offseason. If all goes well, next week again, we'll focus more on the defense, edge rusher, and corner. Want to hit on that as well. Mm-hmm. Senior Bowl week, Chris, as well. I tweeted out this morning, 11 of the past 30 Colts draft picks have come from the Senior Bowl, and I think without the Combine this year, that week is even bigger. So kudos to Jim Nagy and the group down there for still running the Senior Bowl amidst all of this chaotic nature. And then lastly, I just want to thank people for leaving some reviews and some rates on the podcast.
Yeah.
I noticed a few of those. So again, for people that maybe haven't done that in a while or feeling nice in this new 2021 year, we would greatly appreciate a nice rating and a nice review as well. Anything else, man?
No, like you said, Senior Bowl week. Love it. It's a hand measurement season, as a lot of people call it. You get all these different statistics and analysis about players, and it's like, okay, all right.
I already got people being like, boy, yeah, Ian Book, same height as Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, this and that. I'm like, God love him. All right, man. Everybody have a great week, great weekend as well, and hopefully we'll be back next Tuesday with another edition of Kevin's Corner. He's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. See ya.